Is this the ultimate post-apocalyptic build or just radioactive mess? Today we are diving into the Youmko abandoned gas station. Let's see if this red rocket is ready for takeoff or if it's a total meltdown. Enjoy! Alright, let's get into the hard facts. Today we are looking at set YM001 from Youmko, titled The Abandoned Gas Station. Now, if this silhouette looks familiar, that's because it's heavily inspired by the iconic Red Rocket modular from the Fallout universe, originally designed by Dream Build Bricks. However, as we see later, there are some very specific differences in this version compared to the original mock. This is a massive build. We are taking over 2,200 pieces with an official age rating of 14 plus. Interestingly, this isn't your standard single plate modular. It actually sits on two base plates, giving it a much wider, sprawling presence on your shelf. Now, Youmko sent the set over to me as a review sample, so I could put it through its paces for you. But if you were to build this yourself, it retails for right around 60 euros. When you break that down for a set of the scale, you're paying roughly 2.7 cents per piece. In a market where we are used to seeing 10 to 13 cents as the norm, that's an absolute steal, provided of course that the actually quality holds up. Let's see if those savings come at a cost when we look at the instructions. Now, let's talk about the manual, and this is where things get interesting. It actually opens up with a short story that spans across 2 pages to set the mood for this post apocalyptic world. A really nice atmospheric touch that I wasn't expecting. However, once you get into the actual building steps, the experience changes. For a set with 2,221 parts, the instruction booklet is surprisingly thin, just 82 pages in total. The entire build is completed in only 179 steps. To put that into a perspective, you're often placing 12, 15, or even 20 bricks in a single step. It is incredibly dense. The real challenge, though, comes right at the beginning. Because the build spans across two base plates, the instructions have you placing bricks all over the large footprint simultaneously. Since there are no clear landmarks yet, you really have to stop and carefully count the studs to figure out the exact positioning. It's definitely a bit of a headache in the early stages, though it does get much easier once the foundation is set. On top of that, the color reproduction isn't always perfect. Distinguishing between the different dark shades like the grays and blacks can be a bit of a guessing game at times. It's a manual that demands your full concentration and a very bright desk lamp. Moving on to the parts, and this is where the Youmko set really starts to shine. First off, the sheer number of printed parts is staggering. We are talking about a huge amount of detail that, in a standard set, would you usually be handled with stickers. But here, absolutely no stickers. Everything you see is printed directly onto the bricks, which is a massive upgrade for the longevity of the model. The quality of the bricks themselves is surprisingly high. The clutch power is solid and, more importantly, consistent across all 2,200 plus pieces. You won't find any of those annoying loose bricks or pieces that require a hammer to fit together. Plus, there are some really interesting parts here. Unique molds and elements that simply doesn't exist in the LEGO universe, which adds a fresh layer of detail to the build. Now, I did one exception to the quality: the hook on the tow truck. It just didn't have the grip it needed and was consistently falling off during the build and while moving the vehicle. It's a small frustration, but worth nothing. A quick word on how these are packed. The individual bags contain exactly what you need, no more, no less. However, don't panic. Youmko includes a separate, massive pack of spare parts to cover the entire build. It's literally a mountain of extras, which is great safety net. In the end, I had absolutely no missing pieces, which is impressive for a set of this scale. Given the price point, the overall part quality is just amazing. Now let's talk about the actual time spent on the bricks. Overall, I found this to be a very good and interesting building experience. One of the biggest wins here is the lack of repetition. Because of the abandoned aesthetic and the unique layout, you're rarely building the same thing twice. The set is broken down into 8 sections, with each one taking roughly 30 minutes to complete. That put my total building time around 4 hours. I'll be honest, this is a very challenging build. Because the instructions are so dense, I found myself having to go back and fix a few mistakes every now and then. It's the kind of set that requires your full attention. However, there were two parts I didn't enjoy as much. First, building the roof. It just wasn't a great experience, and the construction felt a bit tedious compared to the rest of the station. Second, the letters on the roof. Building and attaching those was incredibly fragile. It's one of those moments where you have to hold your breath and hope nothing snaps off while you are trying to line them up. Despite those small frustrations, seeing the structure come together across those two base plates was incredibly satisfying. Now, how does this stack up against the original Dream Build brick smoke? Well, the actual inspiration is clear and the final model looks incredibly close to that original version. I actually see the Youmko version as a further development of the design. The most striking difference is the rocket itself, which has been completely redesigned. But the real storytelling is in the red rocket lettering. Youmko actually replaced three of the letters with transparent bricks. This creates a brilliant floating effect, making it look like the sign is decaying. The C, for example, is intended to hang down precariously, looking like it's just seconds away from falling off completely. It's a small intentional detail that adds so much character. Where Youmko really pushes the envelope is with their part selection. They use elements that simply doesn't exist in the Lego universe, like inverted tiles, which allow for much smoother finishes. They are also leaned heavily into custom detailing with a huge amount of unique prints. For example, many of the windows are printed with weathering, and they've even included a Nuka Cola vending machine. It feels like Youmko took a great digital concept and optimized it for its physical build, adding their own flavor of parts and prints to really sell that wasteland vibe. So, what's the final verdict on the Youmko YM001 abandoned gas station? At €60 for over 2,200 pieces, the value here is undeniable. You're getting a massive double base plate built with zero stickers and a mountain of high quality prints. Yes, the manual is a challenge. The 179 steps count means you're doing a lot of stud counting and heavy lifting per page. And yes, some parts like the tow truck hook or the roof assembly can be a bit finicky. But for a Fallout fan or a modular collector looking for something unique, this is an incredible set. The unique parts and the falling sign details show that Youmko put real thought into this further development of the MOC. If you have the patience for a challenging build, this is an absolute steal for your collection. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the wasteland, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What do you think of those transparent bricks used for the falling letters? Is that a clever design choice or does it just look like a mistake? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more reviews of alternate brick sets and unique mocks, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next build. Thanks for watching and I'll see you on the next one.